जय गोपीचन बल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपीचन बल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी, यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपीचन बल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपीचन बल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी, यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा। जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा शील प्रभुपादा। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परमहंस अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमती स्वयं श्री भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी शील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापक शील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परमहंस अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जय विष्णुपाद लकुर किशोर दास महाराज की जय। जय विष्णुपाद सच्चिदानंद श्री भक्तिविनोद ठाकुर की जय। जय विष्णुपाद वैष्णव स्वामी श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबू महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से को श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण को गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिगोवर्धन की जय। श्री श्री गौरांगी बैंगलोरीश्वर भगवान की जय। श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्र महेश दर्शन भगवान की जय। श्री मायापुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। परंपरा श्रीमद भागवतम की जय। ISKCON वर्तमान गुरु अंजलि समाज भक्त अंजलि गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to the assembly. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So welcome you all to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, Text 4. अतो ह्यन्योन्यमात्मानं ब्रह्मक्षत्रं च रक्षतः रक्षति स्म ययोदेवः सह्यः सदसदात्मकः। अतो ह्यन्योन्यमात्मानं ब्रह्मक्षत्रं च रक्षतः रक्षति स्म व्ययो देवः सह्यः सदसदात्मकः। अतो ह्यन्योन्यमात्मानं ब्रह्मक्षत्रं च रक्षतः रक्षति स्माप्ययो देवः सह सदसदात्मकः। Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. That is why the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas protect each other as well as themselves, and the Lord himself, who is both the cause and effect and is yet immutable, protects them through each other. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The entire social structure of Varna and Asrama is a cooperative system meant to uplift all to the highest platform of spiritual realization. The Brahmanas are intended to be protected by the Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas are also intended to be enlightened by the Brahmanas. When the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas cooperate nicely, the other subordinate divisions, the Vaishyas or mercantile people, and the Shudras or laborer class automatically flourish. The entire elaborate system of Vedic society was therefore based on the importance of the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. The Lord is the real protector, but he is unattached to the affairs of protection. He creates the Brahmanas for the protection of the Kshatriyas and Kshatriyas for the protection of the Brahmanas. He remains aloof from all activities. Therefore, he is called Nirbhikara, without activity. He has nothing to do. He is so great that he does not perform action personally, but his energies act. The Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and anything that we see are different energies acting upon one another. Although individual souls are all different, the super self or super soul is the supreme personality of Godhead. Individually, oneself may differ from others in certain qualities and may engage in different activities such as those of a Brahmana, Kshatriya or Vaishya. But when there is complete cooperation among different individual souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Super Soul Paramatma, being one in every individual soul, is pleased and gives them all protection. As stated before, the Brahmanas are produced from the mouth of the Lord and the Kshatriyas are produced from the chest or arms of the Lord. If the different castes or social sections, although apparently differently occupied in different activities, nevertheless act in full cooperation, then the Lord is pleased. This is the idea of the institution of 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. If the members of different ashramas and varnas cooperate fully in Krishna consciousness, then society is well protected by the Lord without doubt. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the Lord is a proprietor of all different bodies. The individual soul is the proprietor of his individual body, but the Lord clearly states, my dear Bharata, you must know that I am also Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna means the knower or proprietor of the body. The individual soul is the proprietor of the individual body, but the super soul, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the proprietor of all bodies everywhere. He is the proprietor not only of human bodies, but of birds, bees, and all other entities, not only on this planet, but on other planets also. He is the supreme proprietor. Therefore, he does not become divided by protecting the different individual souls. He remains one and the same. That the sun appears on top of everyone's head when at the meridian does not imply that the sun becomes divided. One man thinks that the sun is on his head only, whereas 5,000 miles away, another man is thinking that the sun is only on his head. Similarly, the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, is one, but he appears to individually oversee each individual soul. This does not mean that the individual soul and the super soul are one. They are one in quality as spirit soul, but the individual soul and the super soul are different. Om Gyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrijatam Sahana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sjivam Satvaitam Sabhadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padancha Ganalalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavneshwari Vishubhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Karo Devachayam, Muglandevi, Kupadmaham Bande, Shivaram Dhanataranam, Paramandamadam, Shri Chaitanya Isharam. Hare Krishna. So here we see that it's mentioned that the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they protect each other as well as themselves, and the Lord, who is the cause and effect, protects them through each other. So actually, the Lord himself tells Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnam Maya System Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. The Lord has created this Varnasrama system for the upliftment of human society. Now, there's so many different species of life, but in general, if you see, the human society is supposed to be on a higher platform than the other species of life. All the species of life have four things common: eating, mating, defending, and sleeping. But the human form of life is given to one to understand the goal of life, which is self-realization. So to uplift the human life to this stage of self-realization, the Lord has created this system that is Varnashrama. Now the four Varnas that are created are the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. And this is done based on the three modes of material nature that they are situated in. For example, the Brahmanas, they are supposed to be living in the mode of goodness. The Kshatriyas are generally supposed to be in the mode of passion. The Vaishyas are supposed to be in the mixed mode of passion and ignorance. And the Shudras are supposed to be in the mode of ignorance. Though the Lord has created this system, the Lord is aloof from all this. At the same time, he also does not directly act on this, but he acts through his energies. Now, the Brahmanas, being in the mode of goodness, are supposed to be learned in Vedic knowledge and enlighten the Kshatriyas by giving them the Vedic wisdom. This way they enlighten the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas are supposed to have the wealth, and they are supposed to give the security to the Brahmanas. So this way, both are supposed to protect each other. And if they protect each other, then the other two Varnas, that is the Vaishyas, or the mercantile class, who are generally in charge of protection of cows and other things, and they do business. And then the Shudras, who are the mode of ignorance, they are supposed to be serving the other three classes. That's why they are called the labor class. So this system was very nicely created by the Lord. But of all the four Varnas, the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas are the most important. The Brahmanas are compared to the head of the body, the Kshatriyas to the arm of the body. So if the head is cut off, then the body has no meaning, it has no use at all. So that is how the Brahmanas are considered to be the most important in the society. Now, what has happened is that if the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, they work in their proper situation, wherever they are placed in, then the society also, with the proper functioning of all the four varnas and four ashramas, society remains peaceful. In fact, the Srila Prabhupada wanted the entire Brahmanical culture to be introduced not only in India, which has disappeared, but all over the world. That was his mission. Now, if you look at the Brahmanas, their belief basically, if you look at the Smarta Brahmanas, they perform a lot of rituals, they do a lot of samskaras, they recite a lot of mantras, but many of them don't even understand what is the purpose of the samskaras or the rituals that they are performing. All these things are done for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord because he is the ultimate beneficiary. But many of the Brahmanas even don't know that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the beneficiary of all the sacrifices. So this is how the Smarta Brahmanas are also situated, though they are supposed to know the absolute truth. But if there is a Sudra, but who is born in a Shudra family, but if he has right understanding, he is actually better than even a Brahmana who does not have the proper understanding. So this is how the Brahmanical culture used to be in the exteriors, not today. And those days, the Brahmanas, how they used to do was, when the child was born in a very early age, about 6-7 years, they were sent to the Gurukul, the ashrama. There they were given the Brahmanical thread, and then they were taught all the Vedas and all those things. And this way, they became a learned Brahmana. And then what happens is that even many times, Brahmanas who are very learned in the Vedic wisdom, they may also reach only up to the beginning stage of realization of the absolute truth. That is, the three stages are Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And many may reach even the ultimate, but generally they may not reach beyond the Brahman stage, which is the impersonal feature of the Lord. But devotees of the Lord who understand Krishna, they realize up to the Bhagavan feature, which is the ultimate. So that is why they are called Vaishnavas. They are the true Brahmanas actually. So they are situated on a higher platform even then, more than the Brahmanas. Now, the Brahmanas were not meant to actually accumulate wealth. But today, if you see, Brahmanas, of course, everybody requires money for their sustenance. But Brahmanas generally are supposed to be satisfied with whatever they have or whatever they get. They are not supposed to be greedy. But nowadays, what happens is that the Brahmanas actually send their children to school and college to learn the materialistic values and materialistic education. And thereafter, they want them to be employed in big companies, thereby earn a lot of money. So today, many of them claim to be born in a Brahmana family, but they don't have the basic understanding of what a Brahmana is supposed to be. That is how the society has got diluted. Similarly, if you look at the Kshatriyas are the ones who are supposed to protect the society. They are the administrative department, and when they protect the Brahmanas and the others in the society, then everybody is given. Kshat means to protect, and they are not meant to be protect only the human beings. Forget about the human beings. They are supposed to protect even all the other species of life, like birds, bees, all the species of life. They are supposed to give protection to all the species of life. But today, if you see, the most important aspect or the most important species is, like, for example, the cow. Lord himself likes the cows. Go Brahmana, go Hitaicha. The Brahmanas and the cows are very dear to the Lord. But today's the Kshatriyas, they send the cows to slaughterhouses. So Kshatriyas have also fallen. Not only have they fallen on this aspect, but if you see, the wealth of the country is supposed to be under the custody of the Kshatriyas. But, and they are supposed to distribute it properly for the welfare of the society. But most of the so-called Kshatriyas of today, they accumulate wealth for their own sense gratification. So the Brahmanas have also fallen, the Kshatriyas have also fallen, contrary to where they are supposed to perform their duties based on their varna. And when they perform based on the duties that they are supposed to perform, then they cooperate with each other. When they cooperate with each other, the other varnas also function properly and effectively, and then the society remains at peace. So this is the importance of this varnashrama system. There is a very nice pastime in one of the Puranas. There was a Brahmana. He went to the Gurukul to study under Guru. So he completed his study, and then when it was time for him to leave, the Brahmana asked the Guru that I have learned so many things from you. I would like to offer some Guru Dakshina to you. Generally, it was a practice that when you learn something from a teacher, you give some Guru Dakshina. Generally, the spiritual master does not demand anything. So the Guru said, no, I don't need any Dakshina from you. But the Brahmana was very, very insistent. No, I have to give you because I have learned so many scriptures and so many things from you. So I'm indebted to you, so I have to give something to you. Then the Guru said, okay, if you want to give me, and if you're very insistent, then you give me 14,000 gold coins. The Guru actually wanted to test the Brahmana. The Brahmana did not have anything with him. So at that time, this pastime is mentioned about having taken place during Lord Rama's ruling. The Brahmana went to Lord Rama and he said that I need 14,000 gold coins. And it so happened that Lord Rama said that I have just given away everything in charity. So at the moment, I don't have anything. But since this Brahmana came, those days generally Brahmanas were given a lot of respect because they were situated on that platform. So the Lord and the Brahmana, they said that there is one place where there is a lot of gold coins, which is coming in there is a lot of shower of these gold coins taking place. We'll go and take it from there. So Lord Rama took this Brahmana to that place, and there were a lot of gold coins that was coming in the form of showers. You know, when we get rain, we get sometimes very heavy rain. So like that, the gold coins were showering. So the Lord told the Brahmana, I have brought you here. Now you can take as many gold coins that you want. But this Brahmana said, no, I need only 14,000 gold coins because I have given a promise to my Guru. So this is how the Brahmanas were actually satisfied. They were not greedy. But if you look at today's Brahmanas, they are not satisfied with whatever they have. In fact, it is said that a Brahmana should not depend on anybody for his sustenance. He should be having that understanding that Lord will provide everything. So whatever situation or whatever circumstances a Brahmana may be placed on, he should not depend on anybody for his sustenance. So this is how it is said that a Brahmana should be sustaining. The point is that the nature of the Brahmanas, that is why they are supposed to be in the mode of goodness. But Kshatriyas can't have this because they are supposed to be in the mode of passion. So that is why they are given the opportunity to accumulate wealth, to distribute it so that everyone is properly taken care of and protected. The Vaishyas actually collect wealth and give it to the Kshatriyas. But Shudras were never given wealth because if the more the wealth that is given to the Shudras would misuse and then there would be chaos in the society. So this is how the whole system was designed. But unfortunately, today, if you see, everyone is more or less a Shudra because everyone is working for money. And that is the reason everyone is after they work very hard. And then with the money that they earn, they are thinking how to gratify the senses, which is what is given the Shastra. That is the reason Shudras are never given a lot of money. Not only that, the Kshatriyas would, in the years actually would rule based on the advice given by Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are well versed in Vedas. So they could advise the Kshatriyas that this is what you have to do, this is something that you can't do, this way you rule. And the Kshatriyas would also listen to the advice of the Brahmanas because they knew that the Brahmanas were well versed in the scriptures. So many examples are there. Even it is said that in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, as to how when Bhishma Deva was lying in his bed, he had a desire to see Lord Krishna. So the Pandavas went along with the Brahmanas. They didn't go alone because it is mentioned that they were ruling also based on the advice of the Brahmanas. And Krishna was also there. And he showed this by example that Kshatriyas always depended on the Brahmanas for their direction. This is how the system was working. And the Kshatriyas, they were all called Raja Rishis because Raja Rishi means king and Rishi means devotee. And they were Raja Rishi because they were all devotees of the Lord, though they may not be well versed in the scriptures, they were all devotees of the Lord. And they also had a lot of administrative capacity. So that is the reason they were called Raja Rishis. Now, what happens is that the citizens, not only a human form of life, everybody is dependent on the king or the head of the state for their protection. And the citizens are bound to be protected, or all the species of life are bound to be protected, not only materially, but also spiritually. It is a position of responsibility, and that stands for all leaders. Now, both the kings and the citizens are equally responsible, because if some citizen is not is committing some offense, the king is supposed to be punishing him. These are the rules that were given in Manu Samhita, and they were being observed very strictly. For example, if somebody steals, then his hand was cut off. So the reason is that the society would learn, the rest of the society would learn that stealing is an sinful activity. So there was peace in the society. In fact, there is a quote in Srimad Bhagavatam 5th canto, which you all might have heard, that one who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a relative, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. So that means anybody who takes the position of a leader should not take that position unless he can deliver his dependents from the cycle of birth and death. So you can understand how important is the position of a king. There's some more quotes which are very powerful, which I can give you. There's an example, in fact, saying how Shukracharya, he was a spiritual master of the demons. And actually, Bali Maharaj, when he wanted to give everything to Lord Vamana, because he surrendered, Shukracharya forbade him. And Bali Maharaj went to the extent of ignoring his spiritual master, that was Shukracharya. Because Shukracharya was not a full devotee of the Lord, so he did not understand what was the Lord's plan of action. So Bali Maharaj went to the extent of even rejecting his spiritual master. Whereas, on the other hand, there was an example sometime back as to how this happened a few years before. One of the heads of the in Africa, there are so many small states. So one of the heads, he visited the ISKCON temple in that ISKCON center, and the devotees there preached to him as to what is the mission of this Krishna conscious movement, how it was established by Srila Prabhupada. So he was very, very impressed. And he was so impressed that he cancelled one time a lot of appointments and spent a lot of time trying to understand how this Krishna conscious movement works and how he can apply it in his practical life. So this is how, even still, there are some Kshatriyas who believe, yes, ruling depends on what is given in the Shastras. There is a very nice quote in Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, to give protection to the general mass of people who are citizens of the state is the prescribed occupational duty for a king. And by acting in that way, the king in his next life shares 1/6 of the results of pious activities of the citizens. That means a king is meant to give protection to his citizens. And if he does so, then he gets 1/6 of the results of the pious activities of all the citizens. But a king or executive head of state who simply collects taxes from the citizens but does not give them proper protection as human beings has the results of his own pious activities taken away by the citizens, and in exchange for his not giving protection, he becomes liable to punishment for the impious activities of his subjects. So you see how uh, uh, a king has to take reactions, both positive and negative. If he gives protection to the citizens, he gets the result of 1/6 of the all the citizens in the state. But if he does not give them protection, but he collects taxes, then he not only loses the results of his pious activities. That means he will not be a head of the state in future, but also for not giving protection, he is liable for punishment for all the impious activities performed by the citizens. So you see how much a king has to suffer if he does not give protection. But unfortunately, the Kshatriyas of today, they are not aware of these things. That is why it is said that Brahmanas were the head of the society. And the whole objective was to create all, whether it is Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, the whole goal was to make all the citizens the devotees of the Lord so that they can go back to the Godhead after the end of their life. But unfortunately, neither the Brahmanas have that understanding today, nor the Kshatriyas have that understanding today. Not only that, the Brahmanas were actually by their tapasya or austerities and sacrifice that they were performing, they were very, very powerful those days. And if they found at any point of time that a king disobeyed their order, the Brahmanas had that power to, spiritual power to even kill the king. There is an example given in the Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto about King Vena. This King Vena, he came to the throne. But after he came to the throne, he became very, very powerful. And he thought that he is the only one in the whole world that he can dictate and do anything he wants. And in the process, he became very, very proud. And he developed a lot of prestige. Then he started insulting all great personalities throughout. And he started even he even stopped the sacrifices that were being performed by the Brahmanas. Now, Brahmanas, only this thing is occupation was performing sacrifices, but he forbade them from performing sacrifices. And he also did not give charity. Now, the king is supposed to, the Brahmanas sustain on performing yajna, sacrifices, and charity. They don't beg. So the king, Vena, in fact, he stopped giving charity to them. And this way he became very, very notorious. And he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Then all the sages assembled together and they concluded that this Vena is becoming very, very notorious. They tried to, out of compassion, they began to talk to themselves and then advise him. But he did not, King Vena did not listen to them at all. So finally, they realized that if they leave this king as it is, there will be a big political crisis. So what they did was they had so much of power that finally they all killed him by just by loudly making a noise. So that was the power that the Brahmanas had. Now, of course, no Brahmana has got that power. Still, there might be some Brahmanas in the society who, out of their purity, they may be having some spiritual power. But that is how they killed this King Vena and they changed the king. Now, the point is that the Brahmanas were very, very powerful spiritually also. That is how they could do all these things. Similarly, the Kshatriyas, they were also very, very powerful out of their physical power. There is an example given in Srimad Bhagavatam, how there was a king, Rantidev. He was actually fasting for some spiritual purpose, and he made the whole world Krishna devotees of the Lord. That means after he finished his fasting, he sacrificed everything that he had for the benefit of the society. So that is how a perfect Kshatriya is. He does not accumulate wealth for his own sense gratification, but distributes the wealth to the society for their welfare. So this King Ranjidev is a perfect example of a Kshatriya. That's a very good quote in Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto, where Prithu Maharaj says, Prithu Maharaj was an empowered incarnation of the personality of Godhead. He says, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras eat their food by virtue of the Brahmanas' mercy. That means the Brahmanas being situated on that upper class or the intelligent class, it is by their mercy that the Kshatriyas or Vaishyas and Shudras were getting their sustenance. So it is the Brahmanas who enjoy their property, clothed with their own property and give charity. So the Brahmanas don't accumulate wealth for sense gratification, but whatever they get in the form of charity, they distribute it to the other classes of society for their welfare, not only for their material welfare, but also for their spiritual upliftment. Now, in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is telling Uddhava, he says how this whole system works. He says, just as a chief bull elephant protects all other elephants in his herd and defends himself as well, similarly, a fearless king, just like a father, must save all other citizens from difficulty and also protect himself. So the king is one who saves all citizens from all sorts of difficulty, and in the process he protects them, and he also gives protection. He gets protection from the Lord, because there's a mention here, and even in this purport, how when the Lord is pleased with the perfect cooperation of the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, the Lord becomes very pleased and he gives protection to both. That means he gives protection to Kshatriyas through the Brahmanas, and he gives protection to the Brahmanas through the Kshatriyas. And in this way, the whole society is protected. And then there's a mention as to how a king who protects himself and all the citizens by removing all sins from his kingdom will certainly enjoy with Lord Indra in airplanes as brilliant as the sun. That means one who gives protection, he in his future life, he enjoys an opulence as good as in heaven. So this is the part of the purport. The next point that is mentioned is about how the Lord is the cause and effect of all that happens. The Lord is the supreme cause and supreme effect also. In fact, there is a quote as to how during Srila Prabhupada's time, he called all the editors of Back to Godhead magazine and he told them, you should systematically show the leaders whom they should take shelter of. Unfortunately, people don't know whom they should take shelter of. People knowingly or unknowingly take shelter of someone or the other. So they take shelter of illusory leaders like scientists, psychologists, etc. And their views are illusory. And that is why there is a constant tension between the state and the citizens, because the real shelter is not there. If you look at Lord Krishna is the only shelter and is a supreme shelter. Nobody else can give shelter and protection to anybody. So Srila Prabhupada emphasized on this point that because the so-called leaders are not aware of this, they are not able to give shelter to anybody. They take shelter of scientists and psychologists. Either you have to take shelter of Krishna, and if you don't take shelter of Krishna, then you have to take shelter of scientists or psychologists. This is what is happening today. In the process, what happens is that there is a lot of tension between the state and the citizens. The next point that is mentioned is that how the individual soul and the super soul act. All the living entities are all individual souls. The Lord himself tells in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, that everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists and pervades everything. So the super soul exists in every living entity, not only human beings, but all the species of life. There is an individual soul and there is a super soul also. In fact, in the Upanishad, there is an example of how in a tree one bird is eating and the other bird is watching. The eating bird is the one that is the individual soul that is there in the body, who is trying to eat the fruits of his work. And the other witnessing bird is the super soul. The super soul, as Paramatma, is a witness to each and every activity, not only activity, what is going on in the mind, the super soul knows. They say manasa vacha karmana. What we think in our mind, the super soul knows. What we speak, the super soul knows. And what we act, how we act, that also the super soul knows. And imagine the super soul is aware of everything that is happening, not only in this planet, but also in every planet in this universe. Everywhere the super soul knows. So that is why he said that he is the all-pervading super soul. Now, generally, there is a belief that super soul becomes divided by being a part in all these so many living entities. No, the super soul is just one, whereas the individual souls are separated. Now, the super soul example is given that just as the sun gives light to so all the living entities. It is not that only sun is in my head or sun is in somebody else's head. Similarly, the Lord as the super soul is all pervading and he's observing every activity, every thought of all the living entities throughout the planets, not only in this planet, but all the planets. So this is how the super soul is all pervading. In Bhagavad Gita itself, the Lord tells Arjuna, the super soul Lord, the supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all the living entities who are seated as on a machine made of material energy. So like that, we are all situated in a sort of a machine-like thing, but we don't know that there is a super soul who is watching all our activities. And he is directing the wanderings of all the living beings. That is a nice example in Chaitanya Charitamrita as to how one time during the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as you all know, Haridas Thakur was a great devotee of the Lord. He used to chant 300,000 names in a day. That means almost 22 hours in a day. And the remaining 2 hours he would spend eating, taking bath and everything. So he used to chant these names in a cave. And later on, one day it was found that there was a very, very poisonous snake that was there. And the snake charmer said, he said, it is better, told Haridas Thakur, that it is better that you leave this place because the snake is very, very poisonous and is emitting a lot of heat. So in this way, they all planned that Haridas Thakur should leave that cave. But Haridas Thakur was simply sitting there and chanting the name of the Lord. And it is said that the snake itself left that place and went. So this is how the super soul acts favorably for a devotee and vice versa in the case of a non-devotee. So super soul knows everything and he also directs all the living entities. So he can direct a snake also, he can direct a human being also. There is another example that is given in Charitamrita about the snake only. There was a snake charmer and he was a devotee of Lord Ananta. So he was having snake, and in the streets we find many people chanting mantras for the snakes and charming them and so forth. This was his profession. So he was going one time, and what he did was he had his associates also who would play mridanga, kartal, and all those things, flute, all these instruments his associates would play, and he would charm the snake. And it so happened that the snake charmer, after reciting the mantras, was in ecstasy because when somebody recites mantras in a pure state of mind, then the Lord also empowers. So the snake charmer was also absorbed deeply in chanting the mantras. That is the time Haridas Thakura came there. And by seeing this Harida snake charmer in an ecstatic mode, Haridas Thakur also became ecstatic. The snake charmer started loudly singing, very nicely singing and reciting the mantras. And these mantras were actually he was reciting based on what Krishna, when Krishna was dancing on the hood of Kaliya. So this is given in Srimad Bhagavatam. So this snake charmer was chanting these mantras and just reciting those mantras, the snake charmer became ecstatic. See, that is the power of reciting the pastimes of the Lord. And when Haridas Thakura came there, he saw the mood of the snake charmer, and Haridas Thakura also became ecstatic, seeing his symptoms. And Srila Haridas Thakura started dancing and singing and all those things. Haridas Thakura, and out of his ecstasy, Haridas Thakura also fell down on the ground. And later on, after some time, Haridas Thakura became conscious and he realized how the powerful the snake charmer was. Now, what happened was, seeing the ecstatic mood of Haridas Thakura, the snake charmer stopped, and one so-called Brahmana came there to that particular point to see this. And in his mind, he was thinking, this Haridas Thakura is born from a Mohammedan family. How so people are giving a lot of respect to him? And in the process, some time, Haridas Thakura left. And then this Brahmana came and he started trying to imitate Srila Haridas Thakura. And he started to dance and sing and trying to recite something. But what happened was, the snake charmer, he took a stick and then he started beating this so-called Brahmana who was trying to dance and sing artificially. And he beat this Brahmana left and right. The Brahmana then became very, very upset. He went out crying, Father, Father, and he wanted to take shelter and he ran away. The people who are there, they asked this snake charmer a question. And they said that this person, Haridas Thakura, was singing and dancing, but you are enjoying it. On the other hand, this Brahmana came, but you did instead beat him up when he was singing and dancing. So the snake charmer replied, Haridas Thakura, though he was born in a Muslim family, his spiritual position was so high that he could dance in ecstasy out of love for the Lord. But this Brahmana who came, he was actually trying to imitate Haridas Thakura, but he had no attraction for the Lord. And that is why I beat him. And then he said, how can one have enviousness to a Brahmana like Haridas Thakura, who is a great Vaishnava? He's not a Brahmana, he's a great Vaishnava. So this is how the Brahmana explained to the public who was surrounded there. And then he said, artificial imitation and things like that are hypocrites do this artificial imitation. And since this was artificially tried, that is why I had a desire to teach him a lesson. And he was trying to pose himself as a very religious person, but actually he was not. The point is that the super soul as Paramatma knows every activity, knows every thought of every individual. And then the snake charmer said, this arrogant and deceitful Brahmana has no love for Krishna. But to achieve the devotional service of Krishna, one has to be free from duplicity. You know, duplicity means we say something and we do something. That is duplicity. And this, the snake charmer could understand Haridas Thakura's position, but the Brahmana could not understand his own position. Then he says, pure devotion to Krishna is the essence of life. And then he concludes by saying, one who sees Haridas Thakura dancing is freed from all bondage in material life. And when Haridas Thakura dances, Lord Krishna personally dances. That means when Haridas Thakura dances, the Lord himself dances because the Lord is situated as a super soul. And then he said that the whole universe can be purified by seeing Sri Haridas Thakura dance. That means if Haridas Thakura dances, Krishna dances, and this way the whole universe can be purified. Not only by that, he also concludes by saying, his name is Haridas, is appropriate for Lord Krishna constantly dwells in his heart. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma, but he says that Haridas Thakura knows the presence of the super soul in his heart. We all know that, we all have heard that Krishna is seated as the Paramatma, a feature in our heart, but we don't realize that. And then he concludes by saying, he is affectionate to all the living entities and is always engaged in their welfare. He accompanies the Lord wherever he incarnates. That means Haridas Thakura is compassionate to all the living entities and he accompanies the Lord wherever the Lord appears. So this is the position of devotees of the Lord. He further says, he is never offensive to Vishnu or Vaishnavas, and even in a dream he does not deviate from the proper path. So being a constant associate of the Lord, devotees of the Lord don't deviate from the path of Vaishnavas. And what to talk about the Lord, he says Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva always desire to associate with a devotee like Haridas Thakura. The demigods headed by Brahma always hanker to become glorious by obtaining the association of Mahabhagavata like Haridasa. So this was the position of Haridas Thakura. And he further says, one who associates with Haridas for even a fraction of a moment will certainly attain shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. And if by good fortune resulting from accumulated pious activities over many lifetimes, a living entity associates with Haridas Thakura for even a short time, he will certainly achieve the Lord's lotus feet. The point is that the Lord has a witness as Paramatma, is observing, and he gives the results according to one's karma. And then, yes. Finally, he says, if one sees a person who has taken shelter of Haridas, he is free from material bondage. And then finally he says, if I glorify Haridas for 100 years with 100 mouths, I would still not reach the end of his glories. We are all fortunate because of you. I received an opportunity to glorify Haridas. So this was the position of an insignificant person like Haridas Thakura. And after speaking like this, Snake Charmer became silent and he left. The point is that it is said that by hearing the Snake Charmer's narration through the mouth of a Snake Charmer, all the people had developed great affection for Haridas Thakura. So by hearing this answer that was given by the Snake Charmer, all those who were present there, they all developed great affection and attraction for Sri Haridas Thakura. So that is how the Super Soul facilitates all the actions are taking place through this Varnasrama system. With this, I conclude the class for the day. If anyone has got any questions or any comments, you can ask me for the next few minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandapanam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay, as you were saying in the class, a very wonderful class, Prabhu, first of all, and as you were saying in the class that super soul is present in every living entity. So should we understand like that the whole universe, not even a dot is separate from the super soul?
Yes, Prabhu.
Can we understand that?
Yes, Prabhu, perfectly right. The super soul is pervading through everything, all through the universe, not just one place. Throughout the universe, the super soul is pervading. That is why we all, if you see the Shastra, so many things are information are given that are not available through the scientists. So they are true. The Lord himself gives the Shastras. He himself provides the sadhus. He himself provides the guru also. So that way the super soul is all pervading throughout the universe. Otherwise, how can we get information what is happening in other planets in the universe? People are trying to exploit whether there is life in Mars or not. But so much of information is given. What are the planetary systems? What are the living entities? The living entities in the heavenly planets. So much of information is given which scientists can't even have access to. So super soul is all pervading, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. One more question, Prabhu. Like,
Yes,
and
Prabhu.
Brahmanas normally, like Brahmanas, we accept them to not to take, like they have to accept some charity, or else they are not to like beg from somebody there. But nowadays, Prabhu, wherever like if we request for some Bhagavatam or something like that, people charge elaborately, like normally the Brahmanas. What exactly is the correct way of to understand this, Prabhuji?
Actually, the correct way to understand is that Brahmanas are not supposed to ask anything from anybody. Those who are doing rituals even today, somebody may be performing a marriage samskara, but they are not supposed to ask that I have to charge you this much, you have to give me this much. They may be doing it for their sustenance, that profession, but they are not supposed to ask. When they ask, the purpose of the ritual is not there. Similarly, if somebody is doing a Bhagavad Sapta, they cannot demand money because it's a service to the Lord. The Lord will automatically provide. See, if your service is perfect, who will not give something as a dakshina? Even today, the people are prepared to give dakshina. Those who are well off, they know, who know the truth, they give dakshina. There are so many people who give dakshina to the Brahmanas, but the Brahmana cannot demand. If he demands that service, for that service, it's not pleasing to the Lord. So we have to actually select those who are situated in that platform. And actually, there is nothing like a sapta that is existing, but it is there in the society, but we can't help it. And for that, nobody can say that I need this much of money. And it is a duty of those who are inviting Brahmanas to take care of them, because the Brahmanas don't have any means of living. They have to give something in charity for their sustenance. It is both ways. If they don't give for what they take, then it has no meaning. The samskara will not have any effect. So that is why even those who invite, they have to give a suitable amount of charity depending on their capacity. They cannot escape from that. It works both ways. They cannot, Brahmanas can't demand, and those who take service from the Brahmanas, they cannot refuse to give charity. Even if it is a small amount, insignificant amount. I've heard there are people who got samskaras done, but they did not have capacity to pay. But they have got done and they have paid 300 rupees, 500 rupees. That is enough, because the Lord understands that is their capacity. And the person who does the samskara was also satisfied. I've come across such Brahmanas also. So there are people in the society still today, but it is very rare. It's not general, but it's not right thing to demand. Did I answer your question, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna. Dandapanam. Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else? Any other questions, comments? I think there are no more questions. So can I take the class as closed, Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam. Dandavat pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat pranam.
Dandavat pranam, Prabhuji.
Now today we spoke about 4 classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, and Vaishya, and that.
Yes.
But nobody want to accept that they are a Shudra.
Yes. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. But those who are working for others, they are Shudra only.
Yeah.
There is many quotes which sometimes I can give, even if somebody is born as a Shudra also, but he understands that Krishna is the absolute personality of Godhead, and if we do for his satisfaction, if we work and utilize, still he is situated on a higher platform. But not many are there like that. I understand what you say, but still, if we are all, we may be Shudras, but if we are doing everything for Krishna consciousness, a Vaishnava, he is called a Vaishnava and he is situated on the highest platform more than a Shudra also. So that is the right understanding. Then there are some very nice quotes which I have, but unfortunately I didn't pick them up today. But if somebody is situated perfectly in devotional service, There are so many devotees in the movement who are all very highly opulent, and they have given a lot of wealth to the movement also to spread Krishna consciousness. We can't call them Shudras. They are the greatest devotees of the Lord.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.